Hi, what can you tell me about the Battle of Hampton Roads?
That was the Civil War battle between the two ironclads, right?
That's right, but the ironclads didn't meet until the second day. Take a look at this.
Brother against brother, the Civil War was the North fighting the South, with Richmond being a pivotal location. The North wanted Richmond, and the control of the Chesapeake Bay was necessary in Lincoln's plan to end the war and to unite the Union and the Confederacy as one. In order to take Richmond, a water approach as well as a land approach was needed. Lincoln planned for the Union Navy to cut off aid and supply to Richmond via the water, so the Confederacy would be without reinforcement or possibility of retreat while land forces attacked. This leads us to the Battle of Hampton Roads and its significance in Lincoln's blockade plan. The Battle of Hampton Roads was a two-day battle in which many lives were lost and huge advances in the use of the enginery of war were established. While commonly referred to as the Merrimac, the Confederate Army had in fact renovated an established warship, the wooden frigate Merrimac, and outfitted it with a lining of iron, creating their ironclad warship, the CSS Virginia. On February 24, 1862, while receiving command of the ship, the new captain, Captain Buchanan, was told, "The Virginia is a novelty in naval construction, is untried, and her powers unknown. Her powers as a ram are regarded as very formidable, and it is hoped that you might be able to test them." On the day of the battle, what started as a beautiful day diminished quickly as the lines were drawn, leading to the extremely deadly first day of the Battle of Hampton Roads. On Saturday, March 8th, at 12:00 p.m., the Merrimac left her wharf in Norfolk and steamed directly to Newport News. At 2:00 p.m., the Merrimac quietly proceeded between the Congress and Cumberland, two wooden ships that were fighting for the Union. Seeing the Merrimac, the Cumberland started firing, only to see its shots ricochet off the Merrimac's iron casing. In response, after receiving the first broadside of the two frigates, she ran onto the Cumberland, striking her about the midships and literally laying open her sides. In the process of ramming the Cumberland, the Virginia lost its formidable ram, and the Cumberland was left so disabled that it was no longer able to float and began to sink. It was then that the Merrimac began to set her eye upon the Congress. The Congress, however, was in too shallow of water for the Merrimac to reach her, but eventually the Congress was set on fire and sunk. The Minnesota was a large steam frigate, also fighting for the Union, that ran aground before ever having the opportunity to fight. Some say this was a fortunate event because, if she had gotten here, she would have certainly been destroyed. While darkness was falling on the first day of the Battle of Hampton Roads, the Merrimac was thought to have run aground, as she was only a mile from the grounded Minnesota and yet made no attempts to fire on her. The second day would see the entrance of the only formidable opponent the Merrimac would ever see. Crafted with 2 guns as opposed to the 10 on the Merrimac, the USS Monitor was built in response to the creation of the Confederate ironclad. The Monitor was designed to show only 6 inches above water. It could go twice the speed with half the turning radius of the Merrimac. While the Merrimac needed a minimum of 22 feet of water, the Monitor could operate in a mere 10 feet. Day 2, March 9, 1862, started with the Merrimac focused on destroying the Minnesota that had overnight remained aground. After a gunfight, but before either one could be sunk, a very curious-looking little concern came up from Old Point, supposed to be the Erickson Battery or the Winans steamer. The Monitor had sailed straight from its origin in New York and arrived just in time to engage the Merrimac in battle, saving the Minnesota from her wrath. The Monitor proceeded to move towards the Merrimac until they were a mere mile from each other. The Merrimac delivered the first shot fired between the two ironclads, but soon the Monitor dominated the fight. The ships soon found themselves fighting with just 40 feet between them, engaged in a bloody battle. After fighting for a few hours, the Merrimac continued in its attempt to defeat the Minnesota. The Monitor repeatedly intervened, and because of its superior agility, it was able to maneuver itself into positions that gave them the opportunity to slowly damage the Merrimac. After sustaining considerable damage, the Merrimac moves away to assess her position. During the fighting, the Monitor's commander had suffered a blinding injury but refused to let it hinder his crew's fighting. The Merrimac knew the falling tide would keep her from escaping later. Knowing this, she made the decision to pack up, and the Monitor perceived the Merrimac leaving as her running, so the Monitor began to follow the Merrimac but soon returned to Fortress Monroe. This saw the end of the famous Battle of Hampton Roads.
The Battle of Hampton Roads was a major turning point for naval war technology that made the wooden warships obsolete and replaced them with ironclads. A new class of warships emerged, but these two iconic ironclads never faced each other again and both soon sunk from unrelated causes. During the battle, the Merrimack had given the U.S. Navy the worst defeat it would see until the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor, earning it a spot in history forever.